Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. I'd like to introduce Susan R. Nelson.
The crowd goes wild. Hi, everyone. My name is Susan R. Nelson, and I am absolutely over the moon to be here tonight. I have wrote my memoir in 2015, so it's been published for a while, and I've spoken many, many times on different elements from gun safety. I'm actually the poster child for the state of Texas DPS's safe storage program. Google it, go on there. You can see a little presentation of mine. I've done a lot of lobby work and worked for gun policy and spoken on that in front of the House and in front of the Senate. And I've worked with brain injury organizations and lots of spoken at Rotary clubs. I've been interviewed on the BBC. Vice News out of Canada did a big piece on me. So I'm familiar with it, but Galveston, in the name of my book or my memoir, The Only Light I Saw Was in Galveston, I've never really had the opportunity to address the way I wanted to address it. Because Galveston, I really feel like, is why I'm here. So a little background, my grandparents lived in Lamarck, and I know that's not Galveston, but my grandmother's sister, my great aunt, lived in the big house at 29th and Broadway. And she had married into the Van Alstyne family. And they lived there from the 30s to the 70s. And at one point, my father actually lived there so that he could go to school with his best friend, who was his cousin, and go to Ball High School when Ball was on Ball Street. And then my dad, at 88, still likes to talk about how he used to work at the Martini Theater. And, you know, when he wasn't even old enough, he says, I wasn't even old enough to work there. But Galveston has this history with me. I lived with my grandparents for many years growing up. I went to first and fourth grade in Lamarck with them. And I actually had my very first head injury here in Galveston. Who knew I was going to make it a trend? I was in, I think, around the second or third grade, and I had just perfected the back dive off of the side of the pool. And my grandparents were here in Galveston visiting some friends in an apartment over off of Ferry Road. And my treat was that I got to go swimming in the swimming pool. So I jumped off the back of the swimming pool to do my back dive and clearly did not do it properly. And my head came around and hit the side of the pool. And as I started to drift into the deep end and sink, my grandfather, who had had polio and never learned how to swim, jumped in the pool, grabbed me, grabbed the side of the pool, and got us both out. And I only needed 5 stitches. So that was my first experience with a head injury, and Galveston saving me. So it's kind of ironic that, well, you'll hear how I got to Galveston in just a bit. I do want to share with you that when I was in high school, I used to come here, and I would drive from Beaumont, which is where I was from, and I would drive down the beach road. I would come at night so I could just see the ocean, and I'd get on the ferry, and I loved being and smelling the salt air. And then I would go down the seawall, and I would turn around, and I would drive back. And that was, and it's just the greatest joy for me to be on this island, because I didn't live here, but I wanted to be here, and I had so much experience in living here. So for some reason, the island has called to me, and when I met my husband, that cute guy right over there, I couldn't wait to share it with him. So we would come to Galveston all the time. We stayed at different places like the Commodore. We stayed in different VRBOs, and occasionally we got spiffy and stayed at the Grand Galvez. And soon he fell in love with the island. He actually got to tour my great aunt's home because at the time it had been a little kind of an antique thrift shop at the time. This was in the early 90s and late 80s, early 90s. And no, I take that back. It was actually in the late 90s when we were touring that. And again, he fell in love with the island and eventually fell in love with me and all of my quirkiness and all of the things that I have going on in my life. So it made sense to me that in 1993, when I was in a coma and I was in a hospital fighting for my life because I had been shot in the back of the head at a home robbery and I had a bullet in my left shoulder as well, that Galveston would be where my brain took me to be safe, to survive, to fight. And at the time, Galveston wasn't a pretty place in my mind, and I think it needed to be a little scary because it needed me to fight to live. And so in this state, when I'm in a coma, I came to Galveston and I was captured by witches. And the witches they strapped me down and they were going to sell me. They were auctioning me off. And at the same time, I think the reality was that I was in a coma. I was being strapped down because I had been fighting and I had been pulling tubes out and trying to escape. So they had strapped me down for my safety. And they never expected me to live. They thought I was going to be gone. The reason why was the injuries were so extreme. Of course, like I said, I had a bullet in my brain. The gentleman that I was with at the time at the home robbery, he didn't make it. He died in flight. So it was pretty a dire situation. But I was not going to let those witches take me. And I wasn't going to let anybody else take me. So I fought. And I fought and fought and fought. I totally lost my train of thought there. That happens sometimes with a head injury. So I always had this saying, everything happens for a reason. And I can't think of the other one. I actually have two sayings. But everything does happen for a reason, and I have to believe that what happened to me happened for a reason. And the other one is it's all about choices. And the choices for me in this time were that I could continue to live my life and continue to fight, or I could go down a rabbit hole of negativity and hate and anger and just being a bad person. Guess which one I chose? I chose the negativity, the hate, and the anger and being a bad person. So for many, many years, I fought hard to not let anyone know that I had a brain injury. I fought hard to not let anyone know that I was damaged. And what that did to me is it put me in a really bad place where I eventually ended up living on top ramen and 2 packs of cigarettes a day and cheap box wine. I mean, it was not a good situation. Because when I was in the hospital and I knew I wasn't going to die, they said, well, it's time to go. I mean, you can't stay here. So I'm like, but I can't walk. I can barely speak. I can't feed myself. How am I supposed to go? Where am I supposed to go? Thankfully, I had a sister who was well connected with people that could give me help. So after a month in the hospital, my sister came to pick me up, and she was going to take me home with her. and she drove up in her little Nissan 240 ZX little hatchback mini car, and here I am in a wheelchair. She picked me up. I weighed about 70 pounds. She put me in the front seat, strapped me in, and threw the wheelchair in the back, and off we drove to San Angelo. And who wouldn't want to do a 4-hour road trip after being in a coma? It was just comical. And I called my sister because I wanted to get that car right, because that road trip was comical. I shouldn't have been there, but it saved my life. Another time saving my life. So my sister told me I should share with y'all about our pit stop and when we went to the restroom. And I don't want to share that, so y'all have to read about it in the book. A lot of fun things happened with my sister. A lot of not so fun things happened. She was determined to entertain me while I was learning how to read, and while I was learning how to walk, and when I was learning how to feed myself. And I was a 29-year-old bitch, and I didn't want anybody to do anything with me. But my sister did her best. She actually took me on a camping trip to the Frio River, which if ever you're in a wheelchair, I would highly recommend that. But what my sister did for me was she got me the help I need. She got me into rehab centers where they could teach me all of the things that I needed to do. And it was going to take some time. The first 3 months I spent were in San Angelo, where she lived, with West Texas Rehab. And I learned so much at that rehab that I was able to move to another rehab center after about 3 months in Dallas that would allow me to become more independent and get stronger. And I was there for about 3.5 months. And then the well ran dry, and basically they said, well, there's not really much more you can do, kind of like the hospital had done. You've got to go. And I was like, great, I'm ready to get back with my life. I'm now 30 years old, and I'm ready to live on my own. But the rehab center said, oh, you can't do that. We can't release you on your own because you're not safe. So you're going to have to live with someone. And I'm like, this is crazy. Thankfully, I had a friend who had an extra room in their apartment, and they allowed me to live with them. So I spent the next 6 months living there. But the bad part about it was in Arlington, which is where all this happened. I was around the same people. I drove by the apartment complex where this had happened. I was struggling, and I was getting angrier and deeper in darkness. And I really didn't like that. So in around May of 1990, I think it was 94, I had the opportunity to go to a wedding in Atlanta. I go to this wedding, I come back, I tell my friend, my 6 months is up, I'm moving to Atlanta, I quit my job, and the next week I was living in Atlanta. I didn't know anyone, I didn't have a job, and I didn't care, because I was going to be where no one knew who I was, and I could bury everything, and I could just start my life over. This is how I thought. Again, I was very, very negative and depressed. So as you can imagine, Atlanta was a huge success. No, I'm kidding. Atlanta was a nightmare. I lived there about 2.5 years, until 97, early 97. And then I had put on weight. I was depressed. Again, I'm living off of cigarettes and box wine, and I'm just getting worse and worse and worse. And it finally dawned on me, this sucks, and I don't want to live this way anymore. Thankfully, I had always had music in my life, and I had music playing in my life all the time. And the songs that were in 97 that really hit a chord with me was Sheryl Crow's A Change Will Do You Good. And I thought, yes, a change would do me good. I need some help. There was also another song, Chris Rea's Texas. And I was like, maybe I should go back to Texas. These tunes are playing in my head. And I'm thinking, how do I get back to Texas? Thankfully, I was able to have a doctor do a regular check and said, you need some serious help. Connected me with a great psychiatrist. I pulled myself together as best I could. I called in some favors from some friends, and I was able to get back to Texas. Now, I didn't want to go back to Arlington because Arlington was where everything happened. I needed a fresh start. And why I didn't come to Galveston, I don't know. But I had a friend in Austin, and that's probably the only reason I didn't come here then, was I went to Austin. And Austin wasn't the be-all, end-all. It wasn't the silver ticket. But it was a place where I would be able to start making better choices, and that would lead me to be able to grow, meet my husband. And then eventually we were able, after all of our explorations of this beautiful island, able to buy our dream home. And I was able to live here. And I can honestly say now, I live authentically. I'm open about my injuries. I'm open and I'm outspoken about psychology, psychiatry. I'm open and supportive about gun policies, and I'm open and supportive about people with brain injuries. And most importantly, people use the expression, be kind. You don't know what you don't know what people are going through. You don't. I'm a walking textbook of that. I went years with no one knowing, and now I just want to shout it from the rooftop that you can be authentic and be an open book and be okay. So that's me in a nutshell, and I'm open for questions. I tried not to get too gross. The only light I saw was in Galveston. So, I apologize. Yes, so when it was, the light was, to me, was that I was in Galveston with these witches, and they were helping me to fight and survive and not have my organs donated and not die on the table or in the bed or wherever, however you want to put that. But Galveston was the light. It wasn't a great light at the time, but it was the light I needed to fight. So that's why, and I think I chose Galveston because of my history with the island and my love of the island, and the fact that I knew it was where I would want to be and end up eventually long term. Any other questions? That image on the book is actually my great aunt's home. It's on the corner of 29th and Broadway. It is still here. It's a great storm survivor. And that is the house that my father lived in when he went to Ball High School. So that's the house that used to have a little gift shop in, and I took my husband to, and I bought a little hat, and I still have that hat. And it's just a great, I grew up playing in that house, which, you know, just as Galveston is a light in itself. That's all I can say. That's my opinion and why I love it. Any more? No? Thank you all for coming. I do have books. It's not thick. I shared what I could share and what I was able to share because for almost 20 years, I never told a soul about this. I hid it really well. I mean, if you look at me, it doesn't look like I have a bullet in my head or one in my left shoulder, but I do. One there and one here. But I wanted to share and I wanted to make sure that I could never hide again, and I never lived on top ramen and cheap wine and 2 packs of cigarettes. So here you go. Thank you. Good. Come on in. Oh, and there is food for everyone. If anyone wants food, I did bring food. I guess I should have told everyone first. There is food. Please help yourself. I will be here for a while. How long did I go? 25 minutes. That's good. 1927. Perfect. Yeah, I didn't want to go too long.
People know that you'll be here and books are for sale,
Yes,
right?
books are for sale. Yes.
Susan will be here for a good while, and of course the books are for sale. Just a gentle reminder, ladies and gentlemen, that the books are available for sale right here. Going up, and I'll bet you can get an autographed copy as well. So the books are for sale, and probably no premium for an autographed copy either. So come on up and pick one up, or two, or three, or cover your whole family for that matter.